Welcome to Dedicated Perspective with Monica, where real life meets real perspective. This is a space for honest conversation about business, money, mindset, motherhood, and honestly, everything in between. I'm here to share my unfiltered thoughts, lessons, experiences, not because I have all the answers, but because sometimes a different perspective is exactly what you need to move forward. Babe, I'm just here to give you my 2 cents dedicated to your growth. Nobody talks about outgrowing your old life. I don't think people talk enough about the grief that comes with changing. Everyone celebrates growth until growth changes your friendship, your routine, your mindset, and the things you tolerate. And lately, I've been realizing that's actually something really hard for me. Some people were only meant for certain versions of me. And I used to think, of course, younger me, that outgrowing had to come with like some huge fallout, dramatic ending, a big betrayal. But now, of course, the older I get, I understand that's not always true. Sometimes people simply stop growing in the same direction as you. And ooh, that can just hurt so much. I first noticed a shift within my friendships. I started realizing that I didn't have the same energy for certain conversations anymore. The same gossips, the same draining cycles, the same complaint with no desire to change anything. I literally was over it. And this wasn't coming from a place where I thought I was better than anybody, because baby, I got my own shit too. But it was coming from a place where I just wanted more of life. And once you start wanting more for yourself, certain environments stop feeling comfortable anymore. And I will tell you, motherhood definitely changed me, because I became so intentional about creating peace, stability, and opportunities for my child that I had to ask myself something real uncomfortable. Why was I pouring into everyone else but not myself? That question changed me, shook me, woke me up, because I am someone who loves freaking hard. I support people phew, like it's like my last day on earth. I celebrate people like there's no tomorrow. So eventually, I had to really admit to myself, what was I doing? Some of the people I was pouring into couldn't even celebrate the growth that was happening in my own life. And that realization exhausted me. Not because they were bad people, but because I kept trying to force closeness that didn't even feel natural anymore. I kept reopening doors, over explaining myself, and holding on to relationships that felt emotionally expired. And then one day I finally saw it clearly. There was someone in my life that I had known for years, someone I had showed up constantly for. I remember calling her because I had something really good to tell her. And in that moment of momentum, it was just one of those things I wanted to share with the person I was close to. That conversation lasted about 4 minutes. When she picked up the phone, she immediately proceeded to tell me what was going on, it was a situation that had already been going on forever. And then we hung up, and I just stared at the phone. I wasn't even angry. I was just tired. And I think that was the moment that I finally accepted this person is not a bad person. This was just someone who no longer met me where I was emotionally. And I don't know about for you, but that's a different type of heartbreak. Because the hardest part isn't even anger. It's grieving the friendship you thought you had, where there's no closure. There's no funeral. There's no dramatic ending. It's just distance. There were moments where I could see my phone ring and I already felt drained before answering the phone. And I know y'all know what I'm talking about. You see that person that's calling you and you like throw out the biggest I feel like women do it a lot, like in the sense of women know that that conversation is going to emotionally drain you and you pick it up anyways. because sometimes you outgrow the energy before you outgrow the person. And I don't even know where I heard that line from, but it sat with me for a long time. Because adulthood teaches you something that nobody warns you about. That everyone cannot go with you in every versions of life. And friendship breakup is so damn real. We talk about romantic breakups all the time, but grieving a friendship? Oh, baby. That grief is so quiet. Like, how do I explain to someone that you still love, that you miss them, but you no longer feel connected to them? And sometimes when that happens, there is no big ending, like I said. You just both slowly stop reaching for whatever it is. I also realize how much history keeps us connected to people. We start saying things like, oh, we've been friends for so long. They've knew me during hard seasons. They were there when I was struggling and broke. And history can make us ignore exactly what's happening in the present. But just because someone mattered to you deeply in one chapter doesn't mean they matter in the following ones to come. And that was something so hard for me to accept because I told you I love hard. I wanted everyone that I love to grow with me. But life doesn't always work out that way. And of course, when I got married, God said, hold on, you asked me for something. It's time for me to show out. When I got married, I prayed to God and I remember saying, God, I know like I'm going into marriage, and if there are people who no longer serve us in our lives, like take them away from us in a sense of like just remove them from our life if they no longer, serve a good purpose for us. And I remember saying at the end of that, even if you have to rip them away, because I told you guys I love hard. So I know I'll give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And I'm going to tell you something. During the season of marriage, I didn't have many headaches planning the actual wedding. What I had a lot of headaches was grieving people who were still alive. And that's something we don't ever talk about openly. When you're with someone, when you're someone who constantly shows up for people, you naturally expect people to show up for you. And I'm going to tell you something. Some people absolutely showed up for us and showed out. But there were some people I expected to be front row emotionally that weren't even there at all. A text never came, the excitement never came. And eventually, during that season, I stopped asking myself why. Because I realized something important. Some people aren't equipped to celebrate versions of you they no longer recognize. And although that season of life was a little bit painful, it's also just life, right? Not every relationship ends because someone is terrible. I don't think those people are terrible that were ripped out of my life. I just think that we simply stopped growing together. And once I stopped pouring myself into those relationships that I couldn't grow with anymore, I thought I was at peace already. Like, that's what I needed, and now we're going to be at peace. And for a while, I was good. There was nothing really wrong. And then something else crept in. Because it turns out outgrowing people is never the hardest part of outgrowing that you'll have to do. Can I tell you something that nobody's willing to admit out loud? That you can have a life that looks completely put together and still feel a quite panic underneath it all. The marriage, the business, the growing platform, the mom who has it all together. And still, you can have something that terrifies you under. Because how do you explain feeling unsettled when everything around you says you should be grateful? I remember sitting in my office one afternoon. Business was good, bills were paid, everyone on the outside is looking in and saying, baby, you made it. And I sat there and thought, why do I feel like I'm just managing a life instead of living one? And that's the part of growth nobody tells you. It does not stop when everything looks good. It just shapes you from outgrowing people to outgrowing your own comfort zone. Because here's the truth: a stable life and a fulfilled life are not always the same things. You can build something that feels safe and still feel like you're shrinking inside. And the hardest part is that nobody's going to tell you to bet on yourself again. Because once things look good on paper, people expect you to stay exactly where you are. Be grateful, stop reaching, are things you'll hear out of people's mouth. But that quiet voice doesn't care what that life looks like on the outside. It just keeps asking, what else is it in you that you haven't given yourself permission to try? So let me get straight with you for a second. If your life looks good on the outside, but you feel relentless in the inside, I'm not telling you, baby, go blow up your life. That's not me. I'm a Virgo. I'm going to tell you, you need to have your stuff in order. But betting on yourself doesn't always mean just quit your job and start a business overnight. Sometimes betting on yourself just looks like saying that idea out loud before you even feel ready. Spending money on a course that's going to push you a little bit. Spending money on a coach, a next certification, even when it feels uncomfortable. Telling the truth about what you actually want instead of what looks impressive. Doing the unglamorous work that nobody sees before there's any proof that it's going to pay forward. Trusting your own intuition over everyone else's comfort with the old version of you. That's what betting on yourself actually costs. Not the confidence, not the certainty, just doing it scared with no guarantee. I had to do that with this damn podcast, y'all. Nobody asked me to start this podcast. There was no proof anybody even wanted to hear my 2 cents. But the quiet voice didn't care about proof. It just wanted me to stop asking for permission to myself and bet on me anyways. I'm literally recording this episode coming home from a vacation. I should probably be sitting on the couch with my kid because I haven't seen him in 5 days. And I'm doing it anyways. I don't tell you this because I need you to feel some type of empathy for me, but because I'm recording this podcast because someone needs to hear it. Betting on yourself doesn't have always proud moments. Sometimes it could feel like a fear that you do it anyways. One of the hardest part about growth is realizing that everybody is going to understand the new version of you. The version of you with boundaries, the version of you that stops over explaining, overreacting, the version of you that finally chooses yourself. And yes, people may call you different, but maybe different is exactly who you need to become. I questioned myself a lot during that season. I wonder if I had changed too much. But deep down, I knew I couldn't keep shrinking myself just to maintain relationships that no longer felt right. And I think that lonely middle phase of growth, nobody prepares you for. That space where you're no longer your old self, but you're still becoming your new self. It's weird. It's a strange, uncomfortable space to be in. So I'm going to say this. If you're feeling disconnected lately, if you're feeling like you have been quietly grieving friendships, if you feel like you no longer align with certain people around you, I want you to know this. Outgrowing people does not have to make you a bad person. And grief doesn't exist only with death. Sometimes grief looks like accepting the people that you deeply love inside that can no longer go with you where you're going. I just hope you guys take what resonates with you, leave what doesn't. Because, babe, this is just my 2 cents dedicated to your growth. And I can't wait to talk to you on the next episode. Talk to you soon. Bye.